Iron Maiden are back on the road with one of the most ambitious tours in their career. And now with several shows behind us, let's take a deeper look at the Future Past tour and its production, the guys' form overall, and also discuss some of the craziest and the toughest choices Iron Maiden had to make this year. Here you go. Right from the first announcement, this tour has become one of the most anticipated tours since Iron Maiden's reunion at Hunter Run, with thousands of fans across the globe speculating over every possible little detail of it, like whether Iron Maiden will finally play Alexander the Great live, will the stage feature the inflatable props, and of course whether Bruce Dickinson will once again wear one of his most iconic stage costumes ever. He did not.
Classic.
And here right away, I guess it is worth pointing out how incredible of a marketing strategy this tour has had from the very start, as let's not forget that it is equally designed to celebrate the band's beloved Somewhere in Time, which, by the way, as of today, still remains the most underplayed 1980s album by the band.
Why, God, why?
And Iron Maiden's latest studio output, Senjutsu, from which only 3 songs were played after its release, and the band's previous Legacy of the Beast tour. And those who are not new to our Up the Iron series know that I love Senjutsu. I honestly think it is a great album, and of course Iron Maiden would have sold arenas just going on a tour promoting it by itself, yet at the same time, combining the tour in support of your latest record, together with possibly the most anticipated tour by die-hard fans in the entire band's history, shot the fans' anticipation level and their excitement simply through the roof. Yet of course, with such an enormous hype around their tour, Iron Maiden knew that they had to deliver something extraordinary for the fans. And we all know they did. By the way guys, only around 30% of the people who are watching my videos are actually subscribed to the Metal Pilgrim channel, so in case you haven't done so yet, and especially if it is not your first Up the Irons video, please consider doing it right now.
We're gonna have a good time. Always.
But anyways, according to pretty much everyone who has been to the show, despite the enormous level of anticipation and the huge hype surrounding this tour, it is only after the final accords of Doctor Doctor, when the lights go dim and the Vangelis classic stars playing, that you suddenly finally realize how huge of an occasion you're about to witness. And the craziest thing is that this feeling keeps you on your toes and in awe even when you're not in the crowd and simply watching the videos online, simply because you realize how long has the Iron Maiden family waited for this moment. The start of the show, right after the covers come off, right away shatters quite a lot of speculations around this tour's production. As no, the Future Past tour stage is nothing like the original Somewhere on Tour stage back in 1986-1987 was. In fact, it is possibly the most modern looking stage the band has ever had in their career. And so this year's Iron Maiden stage is designed to fit into pretty much any different type of venue. And unlike the original Somewhere on Tour, features almost 0 inflatable elements. The reason for that, I believe, is at least twofold. Number one, those being extremely unreliable, and the band has actually felt that quite a lot during their 1986 run, when on several occasions parts of the stage simply refused to get erected. And number two, I guess, is much more than usual amount of pyro Iron Maiden are using this year. And we'll actually discuss the reason behind it a little bit later in this video. But of course, all of those flames and explosions during the show make it pretty much impossible for the band to recreate their original stage, or at least make something similar to it like they did on their Somewhere Back in Time tour. And thus the stage itself does not really feature almost any elements from the original Derek Riggs artwork or production, and in fact does not really lean much towards neither Somewhere in Time nor Senjutsu, with the main element of the stage, I guess, being the backdrop, featuring a unique artwork with every song played on this show. Oh, and I guess another element of the stage, which has remained secret for roughly 20 minutes of this tour, is this prop covered at the beginning of every show of the tour so far, which of course turns out to be a massive gun, designed specifically to shoot one of the Eddies, which this tour has plenty of. Now, last year Iron Maiden of course surprised all of their fans by having 2 different Eddies on stage. Yet this year, in light of making this tour harder, faster, stronger, Iron Maiden simply outdid themselves, as for the very first time in the history of this band, the show features 3 different walking Eddies plus 1 gigantic Eddie the Hat, and only one of them seems to be reused from their previous tours. In order to balance things out, this year Iron Maiden released 2 different Eddies from Somewhere in Time era and 2 different Samurai Eddies, and actually did that in a very, very smart order. So during the second song of the setlist, Iron Maiden fans were finally blessed with possibly the most anticipated incarnation of Eddie the Hat, the legendary Stranger Eddie. Just like Samurai Eddie, last year the Stranger Eddie simply walked up on stage being all space cowboy and didn't really do much action except of showing off that he actually exists. For which, I'll be honest with you, I'm very, very thankful, for out of the many Eddies I've seen on stage, this one actually might be one of my favorite ones ever.
I love it.
Later on, during a prequel to Alexander the Great, and namely the song Heaven Can Wait, the one and only legendary Cyborg Eddie, whom we haven't really seen for roughly 15 years now, walked up on stage to fight the band and their fearless vocalist, Bruce Dickinson. While this of course is not the first time a Cyborg Eddie makes it on stage of an Iron Maiden show, I actually believe that this one is actually quite different from the ones we've seen before, and yes, even different from the Cyborg Eddie which was used on their Somewhere Back in Time tour in 2008. As first of all, he did look like he could maneuver much more so than any of the previous Eddies. There seemed to be a couple of different tweaks which were not present before, and what is most importantly, he does look around 30 centimeters shorter than the one which you have seen in 2008. But anyways, it is of course this worthy opponent which Bruce Dickinson heartlessly shoots towards the end of the song. Then later on during the band's self-titled track, we of course, as always, got to see another incarnation of legendary Eddie the Hat. Yet this time, we actually got to see 2 of them at the same time. One of them being the Samurai Eddie, which, at least to me, looks identical to the one we've seen last year, and another one being a giant, inflatable Stratego Eddie the Hat, which as always appeared during a breakdown in the band's most played song. And here, once again, we see how genius of a marketing team is behind Iron Maiden, as this moment in the show is usually one of the most filmed and one of the most viewed online parts of an Iron Maiden concert. And last year during the Legacy of the Beast tour, the inflatable Eddie the Hat had nothing to do with their latest studio album Senjutsu. Yet this time around there was not 1 but 2 Samurai Eddies present on stage during that moment, which will for months and months on once again remind all of the Iron Maiden fans that this tour is not only about Somewhere in Time, but is actually also about Senjutsu, and for many and many will give an incentive to go and re-listen to their latest studio output once again. One of the most discussed part by the fans about this tour was of course the whole fact whether we'll finally get to hear Alexander the Great live, which by now I guess is no secret to pretty much anyone already. We finally did. I'll be very honest with you. As much as I wanted to finally hear this grand epic live, I was also dreading that same moment at the same time. As for me, as I'm sure it is for many other Iron Maiden fans, Alexander the Great was somewhat of a fairy tale. One of those songs which gave us, Iron Maiden fans, something to look for and something to complain about pretty much every year. And as much as I wanted to hear the band finally perform it, I was also somewhat afraid that its performance would fall short of what I imagined it to be for so many years. And given the fact that the band had so many right moments to play it before, whether it was on the Ad Hunter Reunion tour, the Somewhere Back in Time tour, on which, let's be honest here, they rightfully gave a spot to another epic, and all those weird reasons the band named as per why they cannot play it live, although I was quite sure that they will finally perform it live for the very first time on this tour, would have simply loved if the band decided to not do it for one reason or another. But today, when we finally got to hear that great epic performed on stage, I have to point out that it is absolutely everything I ever dreamt it would be. If you think about it, and if you pay close attention to the way the band behaved on stage, the entire show, and especially on the first concert of that tour, was kind of divided into before Alexander the Great and after it. As if after the boys finally broke the ice and performed the legendary track, and what most importantly is saw the incredible reaction the audience gave them, they almost, and I know it sounds weird, but got even more confident in themselves and got a bit more free to simply enjoy the rest of the show. But in reality, I'll be very honest with you, the reason why I was dreading to hear this track live was also due to the fact that I knew that the band will perform it sometime before the end of their career. And while of course still don't believe that this will be their last tour, the whole fact that this mystery is gone just proves it once again that we're getting one step closer to the end of the touring days of one of the greatest heavy metal bands on earth. The Future Past tour is definitely one of the most ambitious tours in the band's career in terms of its setlist. And the thing is, I did a separate episode on the setlist of this tour, so I'm not gonna go into the details of it in this episode, but the insane choice of songs the band has made this year actually does require quite a lot of concentration. And even more, it actually requires musicians to have quite a lot of physical preparation, which, thank God, despite their age, the boys of course definitely have. I mean, Steve Harris is 67 and he does not only play with his other band British Lion a day before each of the shows, but he also plays football with his team at almost every city the band goes to.
First match of the season, second show day in Prague.
Okay, guys. Keep your
Excited, I'm excited.
But the truth is that such a setlist would have been challenging for someone in their 30s, let alone someone in their 60s and 70s. And this, I believe, is a clue to understanding why we have a bit more pyro this year round, as some fans did notice that Bruce Dickinson, at least in the first part of the show, tends to run around the stage a bit less than he usually does. I mean, don't get me wrong, he still runs a much longer distance every night than I do a month.
Yes, that's true.
But at the same time, I do believe that he tries to pace himself a bit better to be able to keep up with his breathing and keep his voice in shape for the entire set. And who knows, maybe this is why we have a more than usual amount of addies, more than average amount of pyro, and much more than usual amount of backdrops to somewhat cover for the guys in case if this setlist will become challenging for them as they proceed with this tour. Which, let's be honest here, so far we have zero reasons to be even slightly worried about. The Future Past Tour is a challenge the band didn't have to, yet they did set in front of themselves. A challenge to go through a crazy, ambitious setlist and still give it this classic Iron Maiden treatment, electrifying audiences all across the world. And I have to say that so far, the band was definitely able to do so. And I absolutely love this Bruce Dickinson moment from the first show in Ljubljana after the band played Hell on Earth and basically have gone through the hard part of the setlist. A moment in which Bruce Dickinson seems to get lost in his own thoughts for a while, before he realized that he and the boys did it. Despite anything, the boys were able to go through this crazy ambitious setlist, and after that simply started enjoying himself and fell in love with the crowd. And the truth is that after watching the videos from each of the nights of the first several shows of this tour, we can see that it is after this moment, when Iron Maiden have gone through all of the harder songs and the setlist for the very first time and realized that they can actually do it, that the boys started to have an abnormal amount of fun on stage, simply enjoying every night and every moment of this tour with the best possible fan base a band could have asked for. So yeah, my verdict is that if you do have a chance to witness the Future Past Tour, please do it. You know, the whole fact that I'm skipping this tour is actually very hard for me, much harder than I thought it would be. And just to answer your question, no, I'm not actually allowed to leave Ukraine unless I would get a very special invitation from the band themselves. But at least so far, the Future Past Tour is actually everything a die-hard Iron Maiden fan dreamed about. And no, it is not a tour for an occasional Iron Maiden listener. It is a tour for all those boys and girls who are drawing a Cyborg Eddie in their notebook, who are playing air guitar and imagining hearing Alexander the Great live. For all those fans who have stuck with the band through everything, which makes it much more special than pretty much any tour the band has done in a very long time. And what about you? What do you guys personally think about the Future Past Tour, and are you planning to see it live? Please let us know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and as always, thank you so much for supporting me, this show, and Ukraine through this very difficult time. Just know that your support means the world to me and all Ukrainian metalheads. We will prevail. Slava Ukraini!